Hi, Bill Henshaw here again, another one of my YouTube current events videos. This one isn't particularly current events, quote unquote, at least for once, but I'm going to acquaint you, with those of you who don't know, with the historian William Archibald Dunning. And he's known as the head of the Dunning School of Reconstruction and was considered a leading authority back in his day, which was the late 19th and early 20th century. Nowadays, surprise, surprise, just like Jefferson and Madison, he's considered to be a racist, and with that construction on Reconstruction. But that misses the point completely, just as it does with the other two, because his works, and these are the 1890s and early 1900s we're talking about, are eye openers, especially a book I have called Essays on the Civil War and Reconstruction, where he accurately identifies a lot of the bullshit that went on in Congress during the war between the states and Reconstruction for what it really was. And it's really good stuff. And I'm going to have more to say on this on another video, but trust me, he got it about 98% right. Now, what wasn't said, and there's probably good reason for this, and even then, by the way, and Dunning was saying a lot of things that I'm saying now, especially with my state be territory issue, because that's what happened with the 14th War Amendment. The secret agenda was to make citizens out of corporations, and in effect, give them the same citizenship that you and I had, although we were members of the sovereign body politic of the nation and republic. Doesn't work. If people would have known that, the amendment would never have been proposed, let alone ratified, quote unquote, with a capital RAT. But even in that era, he didn't get into the financial aspects, which is usually when you look at wars and things like we've been engaged in, and not just our nation, this is true throughout history. It's the financial interests that benefit. And that's the whole point. And I've gone through on earlier videos exactly that situation with, for example, the Second Bank of the United States, with the War of 1812, which came when our government refused to renew the 20-year lease of the First Bank of the United States. Both wars were caused by these types of considerations. I mean, it never ends. It just doesn't. And this is no different here, because the real purpose of the quote unquote war was for the New York banksters to make money hand over fist at the cost of tens of thousands of American lives on both sides of the war between the states, which was never about giving the freedman rights and putting them on an equal status with us. To be sure, there's a way that can be done, but the way they attempted to do it was not only favored the Wall Street money interest, as you'll see, but it was in clear contravention of all 6 articles of the Constitution, not in concert with it. And that's where I personally have the problem. If you can do that and destroy the whole Constitution over that issue, and the issue here, by the way, is increasing the membership of the sovereign body politic of the nation and republic, or it can be construed to be that. And if you can violate all 6 articles of the Constitution and do that and destroy the sovereign body politic of the nation and republic, you get exactly the result we have today, where nobody has any rights the de facto National Socialist government is bound to respect. Now, at the time, Dunning didn't choose to go into that area of controversy, perhaps because of what happened to Sarah E.V. Emery, who wrote a book called The 7 Financial Conspiracies in about 1887, and within 10 years later, she was dead. I don't know the details of her demise. It could have been legitimate, but trust me, I suspect they gave her the functional equivalent of Dealey Plaza, even though that didn't exist at the time as such, because she really lays it out. And I fortunately have a copy of her book digitally that I'll make available to people that request it at youwinningcourt@gmail.com, a highlighted, annotated version of it. I'm not through with it yet, but I can make the partially finished version available to you now, and the finished version later for a donation, say $35 or $40. That would be handy, because it's a lot of work to do. It's about a 400-page digital book. And like I say, highlighted and annotated with some of my personal thoughts. And you see what the real agenda was there, and it's very ugly, to put it politely. So Dunning was on the right track, and that's how come he got quote unquote discredited and thrown in the trash can in the 1950s and 60s, with the uprising of the civil rights movement. And they haven't gotten anything right from day one, as far as I'm personally concerned, which is not the same thing as saying there weren't some actors there that had good faith intentions. That said, however, if you're doing it for all the wrong reasons, then you have to take a look at the entirety of what it is you're doing and understand people like me that want to undo it, from the beginning if necessary. And that has nothing to do with equality as such. But if we get back to the situation we had prior to the war between the states, now the situation will be that Asians and Africans in particular, while not members of the sovereign body politic, will be inhabitants of states or territories, as the case may be, and will have a lot of rights. And that comes primarily from the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which in turn goes back to the Magna Carta of 1215. And there's a lot more rights in both of those documents that can be enforced in courts. And this is one way to take care of all this BS going on now with law enforcement thugs and out there. And to be sure, most of the people that have been killed have been black men. I get that recently, but that's not the real agenda. That's the Wall Street banksters behind the scenes trying to split things wide open and keep us apart once again. Because if we all act in concert with each other, Americans, Asians, Africans, across the board with the same issues and the same complaints, now we're going to have to get action, or they're going to have to admit the Constitution doesn't exist. And I don't think they can afford to do that at this point, even though arguably it hasn't since June the 9th, 1933, if not June of 1868, when they announced the ratification of the non-existent 14th War Amendment. But that's how important my studies are, and I've been put here for a reason to do this. If I had known 50 years ago, if I had learned in 9th grade civics and 10th grade U.S. history about any of this, life would have been different a long time ago, right outside of Washington, D.C., wouldn't you know? Who the hell knows what happens? Better late than never. I've made up for it 5 decades in, 15 years all in, and I'm making available my research to you at a very affordable price. Information on that, youwinningcourt@gmail.com. Be happy to send you information and some bonus documents to give you an idea. It's just a whole new world out there once you know what the truth is. The truth indeed shall set us free, and our children and our posterity. That's why we do this. And one reason you should want to do, an offensive action, as I just discussed in the video that's up at the same time. And what I failed to mention there, I'm going to mention now, is that, not only is there going to be good financial rewards, which isn't the reason we do it, but you make changes in the system, which is the basic reason I do all that I do. And I also feel, as a member of the sovereign body politic in particular, that I have a solemn duty to do that and defend the nation and republic. And by setting an example like that, for those of you that do have children and families, that tells them in no uncertain terms who you are and what we have to do in order to protect our liberty and freedom. I think it was Jefferson that said eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. If they see it in action, that's better than anything they could possibly get out of school, and especially the mandatory public education system. They see you doing it. That says more than volumes of study and research. I mean, they understand, and they'll learn from you if you teach them too, with my materials and other materials, as you may find also, what the truth really is. And once you know that, they can't beat you. I've not even been opposed in 5 decades, and they have the sworn duty to do it. But that's thanks to, studying people like William Archibald Dunning. His mentor, by the way, John W. Burgess, both of whom were at Columbia University, who's gotten a lot of flack over the decades, for hosting people, especially this racist, quote unquote, Dunning. Burgess wrote 3 really good books. One of them is called The Middle Period, 1818 to 1858, about which I don't remember learning hardly anything in my days in the mandatory public education system. And then he too wrote on the Civil War and the Constitution and the Civil War and Reconstruction, not quite with the same outlook as Dunning had, but pretty close. And those are valuable contemporaneous volumes that were issued. I mean, you couldn't do that at the time in the late 19th century and not get a lot of feedback and flack if you were telling lies. People would have known this is within living memory of the events. So that's how valuable these are. And they're not easy to find. By the way, you go ahead and do a Google search if you want. William Archibald Dunning, either PDF or Word document. See if you can bring anything up that you can download immediately. I've not had any luck. I'd love to hear it if you do. Same thing true to a lesser extent for Burgess. But that said, that's the kind of stuff they don't want you to read. And I'm sure that they go to great lengths behind the scenes to keep it off the internet. And that's just the way these things are run these days. They do not want us to know anything about this, because the more we learn, the more dangerous we get. And I can tell you, in my South Carolina case, I shut the bastards down in 30 seconds flat, stunned them into silence in my initial appearance there after a 2-month journey across country, courtesy of 4 unmarked federal military aircraft. And I got there and just shut him up. The local dumbass there didn't say 2 words to me the entire 5 months I was there. Didn't know what to do, and they're right. They didn't. But here I am sitting at home, not rotting away in a South Carolina jail cell. You can figure it out for yourself. So, it is that good. I mean, to stand there, I wish I had that video, which they claim not to have made. That's $1 million video. Because I'm the one standing there in their court, shackled hand and foot in a red jail suit. They're the ones in trouble with the law, and everyone knows it. That's the reality if you know the truth here. That's what I'm trying to get at with my constitutional defense document packets. For information on that, send me an email, uwinnincourt@gmail.com. Meanwhile, with Mr. William Archibald Dunning, I'll have a lot more to say when I've covered more of his works in depth and get back to you. But he certainly was very right about events with the Civil War and Reconstruction. And like I say, comparatively contemporaneously and with no known agenda to the contrary. So those that call him a racist and this, that, and the other, or short-sighted, they don't understand the perspective of that war, just like we don't understand the perspective of the Vietnam quote-unquote war and the Korean quote-unquote war, both UN peacekeeping efforts. And the bankers made a lot of money from that and the military-industrial complex. That was the agenda there. That's all it was really about. So that's a video for another day. But that said, if you want, to get a copy of that book by Sarah Emery, a donation, $35 or $40, I'll send you my highlighted, annotated version of it. And the finished version, when I get it done, that may take a little while to do. It's still, I got about probably half of it to do or so. But it's fun to do it, sit there, and since we're ordered these days to stay at home and not go out, it's easy for me to sit there for 6, 8, 10 hours on a computer every day and do work like this. So not bad. So that said, the bottom line, point I want to make here is that we all need to work together and quit keeping them from keeping us apart like they've been doing for 150 years. Divide and conquer. Nothing new. It goes back to at least the Roman Empire, if not the Greeks, if not before that. If we all get together with the same issues, the same status, and get into a judicial court where we can exercise our rights, that puts them out of business in a hell of a hurry because they can't even come in there. That's what they don't want you to know. So no more divide and conquer. Asians, Americans, Africans work together. We will get there, hopefully in my lifetime. That part I'm not sure about, but I've set the stage for it if it doesn't happen like that. That said, subscribe to my videos, like them, tell your friends, get the word out. The quicker we step into action here, especially with this BS COVID pandemic, the quicker we get these bastards off our backs. Thank you.